You might say you value family, rest, and play, yet your week is still driven by promotions, affirmation, and a ladder leaning on the wrong wall. In this episode with business leader coach Toye Oshunbiyi, we challenge the old leader follower model and title based power to explore how to lead yourself first, envision the future, align systems, and develop your people so everyone in your organization starts leading from the inside out. Join us if you're ready to choose personal growth over excuses before your business outgrows you. Like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and DM Future to continue the conversation. My name is Arjan Visser, human centered futurist, and your host. Toye, welcome to the All Journey podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Ian.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. We already had a really deep pre talk. And one of the things that actually stood out for me, and I just want to use that as a hook for our podcast.
Mm.
And that is, what if business growth isn't a myth, but simply an oversimplified version of a deeper truth? That a business can only expand at the pace and depth of personal growth of its leader.
Mm. Well, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of truth behind that. And it's something that I don't think everybody realizes how it's fundamental. It's almost like a principle that the business cannot outgrow the leader. Now, if it does, then most likely they'll get rid of that leader. And so there's an overlap that if a leader was to focus on developing themselves, then most likely they will see that development cascade into the business. Now, obviously, they need to be very wise on what they are developing, and we can talk about that, the nuance around that. But you got to start from the inside out, and this is something that since ancient times we've known that. But over the years, there's been a lot more emphasis on what's going on the outside of the title and things like that, which can sort of you create some kind of shadow about what leaders should really focus on.
That's actually such an old truth, like you said. You
Mm.
know, we can expand our business, of course, beyond the growth, the reach of the leader, but then it's not authentic and it's not the fruit of a leader's growth, which actually makes the leader replaceable. And I think that makes also the leader that they are just keeping the shop open instead of leading it, which that has its danger in that you start building strategy, systems, and even scale beyond the authority of the leader. So leading from the inside out, like you mentioned,
Mm.
sounds to me like the only way, although looking around me, it's actually quite a big invitation for leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that gets talked about enough because society and over the last, I would say, 30 years, there's been a lot more emphasis in bigger organizations around once you've got the title. And
Mm.
with the title does come power. And people tend to lead with that. But what you'll find, I've been fortunate to train thousands of leaders at different levels in organizations. And when you coach and train these people, they open up and they will tell you how they really feel about the leader that's above them in the hierarchy. And that's how you know that, yes, people can have a title, but if we are defining leadership as, I would say, authentic, influence, being able to engage people, a true leader who has followers or leaders who are trying to reproduce themselves. These are people who are choosing to say, I want to be like this leader. That's what I would call real leadership. Then we don't really see that in many organizations. What we see is people following They just have to obey the person with the title. But if that leader was to work on themselves first and go in from the inside out, then they will see that. Because it's interesting, because part of that actually is what's going to make other people want to follow. Because we all know that we're not perfect. And so if I was to share with you, I'm really working on my empathy, I'm really working on my compassion, even if you are my direct report, just by you hearing that, that engages you with me to know that, oh, wow, okay, yeah, you're right. If I was to even ask you for feedback and say, hey, Ian, how am I really doing in this area? Then we're on this journey together. And as I said, unfortunately, in some cultures, in some organizations, this doesn't really get promoted in that way. And so we do have this title leader versus the real leader who really wants to grow themselves.
Yeah. The like you just processing what you just shared. With the title comes power. I could add to that and an office.
Yeah, enough.
And the office comes with an obligation.
Mhm.
And before you know, you are stuck in the corner because the office and the obligation seem to consume you. You're not open for feedback, reflection, because it could bring in danger the title, the office.
Mm.
The title can be given to someone else. And we know deep on the inside that when we lead from the inside out and we step into our authority, our authenticity,
Mm.
that it's not about the title, but it's organic and natural. And we also know that in the moment of crisis or adventure, the natural leaders followed.
Yeah.
Still, well, that's actually a question. Do we choose for the title and take for granted that we are stuck in the corner? Or do we just let it happen to us because we're not choosing for who we are and who we are becoming?
Mm. Well, if we were to look at it in terms of what's the typical thing that happens, most would choose the title. They would choose to remain in situations. There's a lot of when you coach people, you find out that there's a lot riding behind that. Once you get promoted, you get more income, you buy the big house. There's a lot going on, and so there are consequences sometimes to this decision that doesn't always help a leader to think about, okay, what am I really building? Am I really building myself? Or am I really just building my career? Now, there are situations where um, it's the whole culture of the organization itself. And so if it's not being modeled right from the top, then they've created this whole culture of everybody's taking care of themselves. And that's partly the reason why, my company, Business Leaders Coach, we try to address this from the founder or the CEO, because that's where the leadership has to be modeled first for it to cascade down to all the middle management, senior management, etc.
So it's actually quite a shift.
Mm.
It's nearly counter-cultural to shift from uh, running the operation to begin architecting as a leader, actually your own life parallel to architecting your business.
Mm.
So how do you start such a shift? Or maybe better word, how do you recognize that you are already shifting on the inside, but now you have to express it and make choices?
Mm. So, from what you're saying about the balance between on the business side of things and then to your own personal life, is that right?
Yes, yeah. Or maybe
Yeah.
vice versa.
Mm. Yeah. So, and this is where right from the beginning, I think there's this this thing about my work and then my personal life. And I think we have to begin to recognize that we are whole people. And I think that's one of the problems we have, especially in the West, where we have this idea that there's my work life and then there's my personal life. And I think COVID helped to expose some of that, where people became more aware that, oh, I've got a life to live, right? So yes, people are making some choices where when we talk about growth development is all just in the work category. But moving forward now, there needs to be more talk about the holistic person. Because if we were to look at ourselves as a whole person, then we should be asking ourselves what's going on in my family life, just as important as, yes, the work life, maybe even more important. And I think by having that perspective, then it will help us to make wise choices, that there really is no shift. It's more of a choice. It's more of a priority, which is, as I assess my week, am I spending the necessary amount of time, the equal amount of time or essential time for myself, for my family, as well as for my business. And if I was to look at things from that perspective, then you realize that there really is no shift. Now, unfortunately, what typically happens, and I've had people who have coached say this, in fact, just somebody like 2 weeks ago, and he was like, I got everything I wanted, and I realized that, and there's a common saying, that the ladder was leaning on the wrong side of the wall. The things that I should have prioritized, I didn't prioritize. And so I think the starting point is to see things from a holistic perspective.
So then it becomes like an ecosystem instead of a balance where you actually, well, you can't balance life because although we tend to call it a work-life balance, but how can you take life out of work
That's
and
it.
work outside of life?
That's it. Yeah.
So it becomes an ecosystem where it's about priority and making
Mhm.
shift and actually making maybe that's the answer to not being pushed into the corner with the title and the offers and
Mhm.
the obligations because now you're running out of time because it consumes you. And it
Mhm.
is about that ecosystem where you are finding the empowerment to prioritize what in the moment is the right thing. And I remember when COVID happened and everyone was forced to
Mhm.
face that life doesn't segment work, kids,
Mhm.
school,
That's it. Yeah.
personal.
Mhm.
A lot of people had to get used to it, but it was a huge invitation to find that wholeness, that oneness.
Mm.
And it didn't help that after it, we all had to go back.
Back.
Yeah. You know, already the word going back,
It's there's something, isn't
future
it?
is that's
Mm.
swearing, you know,
Mm.
going back is, if you believe we walk a timeline,
Mhm.
then it becomes impossible to go back. If you believe it's all happening now, you can't go back. So how do I go back without giving something up that organically, naturally was added to life?
That's right. Yes, and I think it highlighted that there was something fundamentally wrong. Now, it's interesting because prior to that, we've been training leaders to look at things from a holistic perspective. I've been helping leaders to categorize. Yes, there are categories to their life. You know, you got your family, you got your personal, you got your hobbies. So in our coaching, this is something that we always ask, which is, okay, so if you were to look at the different areas of your life, put them on like a wheel of life type of thing, what would they be? And every time you do that, there's this awareness that, oh yeah, wow, I didn't even think about that. It's there, but I don't even think about it. And because why is that the case? It's simply because, like what you were saying, the affirmation, the accolades, the promotion, the rewards come within the working environment. And so naturally, especially for men, it happens both genders, but especially for men, kind of like get our affirmation from there and tend to put a lot of energy and thought in there, in that domain, in that category. But interestingly enough, if you were to then pause and ask that person, what's important to you? If they've got family, if they've got kids, oh, my kids, But then if you then say, but where are you spending most of your time, or how are you prioritizing these people? Because it might not be a time issue, as you said. It's not a balance of time. It's more of an attention thing that you find out that, oh, actually, am I really paying attention to this area? And again, this is important because we're talking about leadership, and what gets modeled gets replicated in many situations. So if we have founders, CEOs, senior leaders who are living that way, then we can immediately see the type of culture it creates, and how people then begin to think, or leaders begin to think, that this is what progression means. This is what growth means. Get it? So we can see how we're talking about growth and growing, I can immediately think it's the next promotion. That's what it is, rather than what we were saying, which is actually it's more about where am I growing as a human being in all the areas. And yes, work is important, but this other area is just as important, if not maybe even more important in some situations.
And that's actually a huge shift
Mm,
to live from the inside out. And we've mentioned that phrase before in the podcast, but I think we can't overuse it. Leading from the inside out, leading life,
mm,
living life from the inside out. You really have to uh, get some resistance for the external affirmation, because then you are following external instead of leading inside out. And that is so easy said, but it's quite a wrestling and
mm,
even a struggle to go through that as a leader. But that's where the personal growth is. That's
mm.
like what you said. We all know that leadership is to inspire other and be the example and model how things should grow and be done. That's not an agenda. That's the inner work of the
Yeah.
CEO founder that becomes the influential source, the drive
Mm.
of the organization. And that's not done on a PowerPoint sheet.
No, it's not. No, you're right. And I think this is one of the reasons why in our framework, I've created this framework called the LEAD framework. Um, and it's based on a lot of research. Actually, it's based on the holistic aspect of a human being, a spirit, where emotional, mental, physical, right? And an organization sort of represents that. So our framework is LEAD. It starts with LEAD, lead yourself first, envision the future, align systems and processes, and develop your people. And in terms of envisioning the future, it's important for a leader to have a vision of what they're trying to build, a purpose. And that's something that, first of all, it starts personally, which I think that's where the inside out aspect comes from, which is that we need to slow down to ask ourselves, okay, where am I going? Why am I doing this? I remember a number of years ago, around that COVID time, actually, I remember meeting a CEO of um, some staffing companies. He had built, I think, around four. And I just asked him a simple question. And I said, oh, that's interesting that you've done this. And why? Why? What's sort of the genesis behind all these businesses? And he just turned to me. I mean, we were on a Zoom call, actually. And he said, Toye, I don't know, actually. I just get bored and start something else. And I said, that's it. Wow. And I never forget that conversation because I realized that wow, some people, they're fortunate to start things, right? But they don't even know where they are going. How much more than the people underneath them if they don't know where they're going as well, if there's no purpose behind it. And so the world that we are in today, where we're so distracted by so many things, I've come to the conclusion that everybody, every human being, whether you have a title or not, we got to start to think as leaders, got to have clear purposes, for ourselves, or else certain people, AI or whatever would take our attention to where we don't want to go. So this is sort of the genesis of the idea, the importance now of leading from the inside out. As you said, we can't overstate it because the whole point of you being somewhere is you should be there for a reason, and that's how you contribute. And when you think about this being the fundamental principle for everybody, it would then be easier for a leader to gather a team because they will now be there for the reason. The old school of leading by title, as I said, when you've trained many leaders, when you've coached many leaders, you find out that a lot of the tactics that a lot of leaders use is just tell them what to do and then threat and get them to do things. But now, if we're dealing with people as people who are also, who have their own purpose, then we empower them and then we know that they are there for that purpose. And that other leader is making a choice to come with you on that journey. So this becomes not just the top leader to be leading from the inside out, but for everybody in an organization now to start to lead from the inside out. And if they don't have a clear purpose, then there's a problem. But once they do have a clear purpose, then everybody is empowered to be part of that. And that's where you actually see exponential synergy. This is where you see people doing things for the right reason, to be engaged, to be motivated. And it's one of the questions that a lot of leaders will ask, "Toye, how do I motivate my people?" I said, that's where it starts from there.
Yeah, you just paint the picture, or at least I see that picture. So you've painted it. And that is actually, we have to abandon the old leader follower construct and recognize we are all a leader. We have to lead ourselves. If we lead ourselves, we lead those that are below us in the organizational
Yeah.
structure.
Hmm.
We also lead those who are above us.
Hmm.
We are empowered by questions that gives us the ability to give authentic answers. So it's not about who do I follow. It
Mm,
becomes who do I learn from
mm,
and how do I lead?
mm.
And that's not just the opposite. It's another paradigm.
Yeah.
And that's the other word. Like you mentioned vision, and I think everyone has a vision because it would be really hard to say you don't see. We all have a vision, but for some the vision is 10 and beyond years ahead. And for other people, the vision is the next hour.
Mm,
But we all have vision. And when we start to find language to articulate what we sense, what we see,
mm,
now we get some clarity.
mm,
I love the example you gave about the person that started something new. So consciously, spiritual, that
mm,
person recognized and said yes to an invitation to start something new.
mm,
But cognitive, there is no language yet to explain
mm,
what just happened.
mm,
And of course, those things are not happening in the same time, but
mm,
both are important for those people that are around you. They need to hear questions that empower them, and they need to be able to learn from you,
mm,
which is a total different dynamic in working together as people. living together as people
Mm.
than the one with the title who tells you to do something and tells you off at the end. And you
Yeah.
are wondering, but no one has modeled it. So why
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
my experiment wrong? And
Mm.
it just left with embarrassment and more questions.
Mm.
And before you know, you condemn yourself for
Yeah.
failing. And next time you will be double careful
Mm.
to add a breakthrough idea.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So huge consequences that are connected to that choice to
Mm.
lead yourself from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is something that um, I hope that we do need to change the narrative. It's obviously not an easy choice. Okay, so this is the part that it does come with its own um, challenges. Because we're now talking about focusing on character. We're talking about focusing on yes, developing your competencies. But let's even if we were just to talk about character, character growth takes time. It's not a microwave type of thing. It's not like you just walk through the door and then you've changed. It takes incremental changes in some situations. And so there's an element of patience involved. And that is one of the reasons, again, why this is so important for founders, CEOs, is because they can set the culture. We've heard stories of certain places where you're allowed to make mistakes. They don't come down on you because you made a creative decision. Those are leaders that understand that, okay, if we want to create an environment where we're developing leaders who are from within, then we also need to give them that space. And we also have heard some places where feedback is welcome. Look, I've worked in places where feedback is not welcome. I've worked with leaders where they don't want feedback. So you get my you understand. So the leading from yourself or leading from within is a big shift that it needs to be chosen because there are lots of other consequences around it. And that's the part where I feel like is difficult, but essential in the world that we're in today.
Like you said, we all have experiences with that feedback is not welcome. And when I look at my kids
Mm,
in raising them, when I gave them instruction or correction, or I shared an idea with them, they gave feedback. And that feedback clarified if I was clear or
yeah,
not.
that's right. Yeah.
And I could have reacted in two ways. Like, just do it and believe, it worked for your father, it will work for your grandfather, it worked for you. Or I could take it as an invitation to get closer and actually build the relationship with my kids
Mm,
and walk it through together. Because now they made me accountable. I increased my intentionality. It gave them ownership
mhm,
and it gave them meaning in what they learned through the whole experience.
mm,
So, all words that we associate with growth, but all words we say no to the
mm,
moment we shut off the feedback.
mm,
And feedback confronts, because if it doesn't confront, it's just pleasing.
mm,
And if it's pleasing, we should smell that there are other motives than the truth
mm,
happening.
mm.
So,
Yeah.
how can people get hold of you? How can they connect?
Yes. You can go to my website, businessleaderscoach.com. And then you can connect with me through one of the forms there, or you can go to LinkedIn, Toye Oshunbiyi. Just type that in. I'll show up. Or you can email me, Toye at businessleaderscoach.com. And I'll be very happy to hear from you, whoever's contact.
And for all our listeners,
Yeah.
the details mention the website, the LinkedIn profile, and the email address of Toye. So please don't leave this opportunity unanswered. Take it as an invitation and connect. I have one more question for today, which is a bit the tough one. It's not, and yeah, the other ones were easy. No, no, just joking. I mean the tough one because it's something that I noticed in my own journey of leading from the inside out, and that's actually the role rest and play have.
Mm,
In general, rest and play is a bit pushed to the side of that's what you do when you have time off.
mm,
If people see it more as no, it's part of work and life. Maybe it's on the restorative side
mm,
because it regenerative for my soul, my life, my body.
mm,
I think it is generative too.
mhm.
I think that rest is really important to come up with new great ideas.
Yes.
And play is really important to work out those new ideas and experiment with them in
Mm,
the context they will have value. Although it seems so far off of the leading business narrative,
mm,
who pushes it completely
mhm.
to the off time. So, what do you think? How can rest and play help us to be a better leader?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think if you were to look at any athlete at their peak, you would know that they have intense times, their intensity time, and then they have relaxation, recovery time, and we have to understand that if we just are full on constantly, it leads to burnout. So you need a rhythm in terms of knowing when it's time to down tool, to just sort of slow down certain things. I think one of the insights that I got in some of my own research about what makes great entrepreneurs is that they know when to move fast and they know when to move slow.
Yeah.
And so there is that skill of knowing when it's time to slow things down. And I understand if you're in a startup, it's not easy. You're busy here and there, but there are ways of how you can do that still within. And because I know that your brain, just because you've taken time off, doesn't mean that you're relaxing. Isn't that true? We could still be, our mind might still, we need techniques and ways of how to really let go. So mindfulness is a good thing to practice on a regular basis so that you train your brain to know how to switch off and focus on something else. The one thing that I teach is my 5 daily habits, which is think, plan, do, reflect, and learn. And in your reflection, you can catch yourself. You write down your reflections daily that, am I spending too much time here? Am I spending time on myself? There's also the example of when you go on the plane, what do they say? You've got to put the oxygen mask on first. And we've got to always keep that image in mind that what you're trying to build won't survive if you don't survive. And so for those reasons, we do need to allocate time to relax 1 day a week. It's a good thing, at least. Different rhythms of how you switch off. Those are some of the things that if I was coaching a leader, that I'll help them to put in place so that they know that they're not going to get to burnout. They're going to recover. They're going to, full of energy. And that could actually even happen inside just 1 day, where you don't have to be switched on all the time. There are ways of how you could even sort of relax yourself during the day and slow things down. So to answer your question, I agree with you. Yes, is the answer.
Yeah, and just two things that I want that you trigger.
Mm.
One is like you go slow to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
And athletes know that if
Mm.
they are preparing for a marathon,
Yeah.
most of them don't do long distances
Distance. Yeah.
before the marathon.
Yeah.
So, and we know it as also like with the habits,
Yes.
think, plan, reflect.
Mm.
Now,
Do
do
and
reflect
learn.
and learn.
Yeah.
If you think slow,
Mm.
that's through the mindfulness or meditation or
Mm.
prayer. If you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
slow, a lot more conscious thoughts are there.
Mm.
You go
Mm.
way deeper and you lead from the inside out.
Mm.
If you reflect and learn through play, there's way more hindsight gained, which
Yes.
leads to insight.
Mm.
And it is tough when you are in the startup, but
Mm.
when you don't nail it as a leader during the
Mm.
startup phase, it will never happen in
Yeah.
the scale up
Yeah.
phase
Mm.
or in the grow up phase.
Mm.
And we already mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it. What do you model as a leader?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want the best for your people,
Mm.
their return is the best for the startup.
Mm.
So if you want the best for them, you get the best in return, which means you have to take the best for yourself
Yeah.
and embed this from the start.
Mm.
And if you're not doing it, then you still choose for the excuse instead of the personal growth.
That's right.
Then and you just set up the business for one thing, a separation from you because you become replaceable.
What happened?
Don't know. You'll just cut it out. I didn't say anything after you left me alone.
I didn't say it. It just cut off.
Yeah, probably an internet hiccup, and then it just takes the camera off, and I can't hear you. I just have to go to the.
Oh.
Let me just do my outro.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank you, Toye, for the deep insights, and at the same time, the raw, honest truth that is not complex, but demands a choice. And I just want to thank all our listeners who stay tuned with us till the end. If you can't wait for next week's conversation because something resonated with you, then I have two options for you. The first option is DM Future. Connect with us. Leave your comments in the section below, because the first step is to actually verbalize, express what the resonance that you sensed on the inside. But I also want to invite you for the Alt Dialogue, which is a place for peers, CEOs, founders who really take the invitation to ponder what's the important question for the future. What is the question we should ask ourselves to be empowered and align with where to we are going? DM Future, and you will receive the right information to join the dialogue and experience it yourself first. I hope to see you next week, and I'm looking forward to see you in the old dialogue. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.